The Marine Corps captured Jacob's heart from the first days when he attended the boot camp. During the training camp, the ferocious brutality of the military elite weeded out the recruits at Parris Island. Because of the insufferable drills, extreme trials, and fire training completely changed the civilians into strong and professional army men. A few of them lasted through the intense training, while others gave up after a short while. But Jacob Martinez was among the first group, and the drill sergeant quickly noticed him amid the new recruits. Well, the drill sergeant quickly noticed the skills and enthusiasm of Jacob Martinez among the new recruits, and he was also in the first group. His agility and endurance, which are exceptional fighter qualities, were impressive for someone from a small town in Ohio. He wanted to join the Marine Corps since he was a little kid, and he got inspiration from his history classes and was really inspired by stories of courage that this branch of the military always had. However, when he was signing the contract, he was in a relationship with Maggie Simpson, who he had known since they were in school. The couple had been dating for more than 2 years and were making plans for a future together. But Jacob's first desire was to become a professional soldier like his father before him, who lost his life during a special operation in the Middle East. Maggie tried to persuade her boyfriend not to take such a serious step, but he was adamant in becoming a Marine. That's because it was his dream to join the Marine Corps. Before leaving, he hugged her and said, "Will you wait for me, honey? I'll serve in the army, get the specialty, and then I'll go back to civilian life." And she responded, "Yes, dear. Don't worry about me, and of course I'll wait for you." She assured her fiancé that night that the couple didn't go to sleep until the very next morning and promised each other that they would make it through life together, for better or worse, and will marry when he returns. Like all recruits, Jacob went to the Army's unit location and wore his military uniform and began training right away. For sure, serving in the Marine Corps was never going to be easy because there are significant reasons why it was considered the elite military branch in the country. In his training, he found a new friend from a nearby town named Floyd Robinson. In just 1 month of training, the young soldiers felt like brothers due to their common struggles, hardships, and extreme pressure put on them by their drill sergeants. They became very supportive and ready to help each other, like siblings. Since Floyd had been in a serious relationship and went through a painful breakup, he was more experienced in matters of the heart than his new friend. He asked Jacob whether he was sure that his fiancée was cheating on him, as waiting 2 to 3 years for a soldier to return is not for every woman. "That's why I broke up with my girlfriend before signing the contract." He shared his opinion while having dinner at the canteen. Jacob responded doubtfully, "We both love each other, and I do not want to ruin the relationship with some kind of mistrust." In reply, Floyd only shook his head and tried to finish the conversation. This left several doubts in Jacob's mind, although he did not take his words too seriously. In fact, it wasn't justified or groundless since he had noticed Maggie's strange behavior recently, as she was sulky and constrained while on call, which was causing him to have doubts about her. In addition, she stopped writing letters, which minimized their overall communication. Floyd shared his opinion that most women don't like to wait such a long time, but Jacob exclaimed that they were engaged and we decided to marry, although he realizes how ridiculous his word was. Floyd advised him to put on an act for his fiancée in order to test her loyalty because he was tired of watching his friends torment. Jacob was a bit skeptical about his suggestion, but later on he decided to go through with it. It would have been nice if the young Marine had realized how close his friend actually was to telling the truth. While Jacob was training at Parris Island training camp, Maggie was busy with a life full of entertainment. She was going to nightclubs, movie premieres, and parties. And in that course of time, she met a young man who was into motorcycles and all that, with stories about long trips and biker clubs, which have always been associated with the romantic life on the road. He immediately turned the woman's head. Maggie soon fell in love with the young biker, and for a moment forgot about Jacob, who was desperate for her letters and loved her dearly. Jacob was feeling that something was sketchy, so he decided to arrange a test on his friend's advice. So one evening, he called Maggie from the phone at the checkpoint and told her the sad news. They had an accident with the helicopter during a training landing, and a fire broke out. He had lost both legs due to the explosion. After that, there was a very tense silence on the phone, And then Maggie exclaimed, bursting into tears. "What do you mean you lost your legs? And are you disabled now?" "I'm sorry, Maggie, you won't leave me now, will you?" He took a brief pause trying to get a hold of himself, but she was sobbing loudly, and instead of answering, she hung up the phone. After that, Jacob was devastated and thought that this test was so cruel and just appalling. However, his Marine friend persuaded him to wait and see what happens next. And after 3 days, she called again, and she was acting like nothing had happened and informed Jacob that she had met another man. "What other man? How could you do that?" Jacob exclaimed. And she said that she is young and doesn't want to spend her whole life with a disabled person. "I'm sorry, but we're done. Goodbye, Jacob." After that, Jacob had a very difficult time remembering what had happened next and was devastated by his ex-fiance's deceit. He then ran to the armory and planned to commit suicide, but luckily Floyd noticed him at the right time and pulled him back into the room. He then tried to explain that you should calm down and listen. You are not the first one who had gone through this, and you can remove the rose-colored glasses and see the reality of a soldier's fate. He exclaimed this while grabbing Jacob by his shoulders, and he understood what his fellow Marine was going through because he sincerely loved Maggie. Well, Jacob took a little bit of time to move on, but eventually he was able to get back to his military service. And during this time period, he participated in various military operations in the Middle East and proudly fulfilled his duty as a Marine. With that, he proved himself a great soldier, and he always wanted to become a true Marine. As a result of an injury he sustained during a combat mission, he was taken from the field to a military hospital for urgent surgery. In addition, Jacob receives the Purple Heart Medal for his bravery and resilience on the battlefield. And when his contract ended, he was discharged from the military, and together with Floyd Robinson, he returned to civilian life. However, during his treatment at the military hospital, he met a beautiful nurse who was adamant to get the young man back on his feet. Her name was Jennifer, and all the women in her family worked as nurses. While talking about everything in the world, the young Marine and the nurse fell into a growing mutual attraction. And when Jacob was discharged from the hospital, they already considered themselves as a couple. Because after 6 months, they decided to marry and had a small wedding ceremony, which was attended to by close friends. Well, Floyd was one of the guests, and after their service, he wanted to go into business. But he was looking for a reliable partner, and Jacob was the perfect person for that. And very quickly, they opened a construction company and started taking contracts. They faced some tough times initially, but things changed drastically. It took just 2 years for the company to triple its staff, which made the former Marines millionaires. After several years, Jacob was going through the park on his way home. He saw a woman pushing a wheelchair in front of her, on which a boy of 7 years was sitting in it. He stopped and looked carefully, and when their eyes met, he exclaimed, "Maggie? Is that you? I thought you got married and moved to another city." Well, it was Maggie, and she lowered her eyes in embarrassment and responded, "Yes, it's me." She said, "I'm glad that you're still able to walk." She said that she got divorced 3 years ago, and since they were in a car crash, her son's spine was damaged, and her husband did not get a single scratch. Instead of helping, he left me and our sick son. Listening to her situation, Jacob's heart skipped a beat, and he felt really sorry for his ex-fiancée who betrayed him 8 years ago. Well, it's obvious that he didn't love Maggie anymore. However, the boy was not to blame for anything. Besides, he was not his son. He asked if there was any way he could help her son with his surgery. She sighed sadly in response and shook her head. "There's actually surgery, but I don't have enough money to afford that because it's really expensive." But Jacob smiled mysteriously and asked her son, "Who would you like to become if you were able to walk again?" The boy said with a spark in his eye, "I want to become a pilot, sir." After that, he shook his hand and promised to help him. After parting ways, the young businessman didn't feel any bitterness or pain as he stopped loving her. But he wanted to help her little boy, and a week later, Maggie received a strange letter with a picture of an airplane on it and a check for a large amount of money for the boy's surgery. The envelope had a small note saying, "I hope your dreams come true, little pilot." Even though the letter had no return address, she knew who sent it. Pressing the letter to her chest, she said a mental thanks to Jacob for his help and kindness. There was an amazing life ahead of her for her son, full of achievements and events. However, he never saw that person again, whom he was forever grateful to.